In this video, I'm going to show you how to install and configure the virtual identity server as an LDAP proxy or LDAP firewall in front of Active Directory in under 5 minutes. So, first thing we do is bring up the installer, which is a standard Windows installer, and go through the wizard and accept of the license agreement. We have our first question, which is what features we'd like to install. We will install the virtual identity server. We're not going to do the SharePoint connector at this time. We will install the management console, which is your interface to maintain and configure your environment over time, and our LDAP manager application, which is an LDAP browser utility much like ADSI Edit or LDP. I'll accept the default locations of C program files, optimal IdM, and the binaries are being installed now. Created 2 desktop icons, and I will click close, and I will run through a wizard which will go through the process of creating our initial connection to Active Directory. The first thing that happens is our services are registered in Control Panel Services, and I click Next on the first screen of the wizard. First choice is what port the virtual identity server should run on. AD is running on 389, so I'm going to choose and accept the default of 9389 for the virtual identity server. I'll also accept the virtual identity server base DN of DC equals VIS, DC equals net. So this will be a different virtual namespace than Active Directory. Click Next, and it needs to know our Active Directory server. So I'm going to type in prod.optimalidm.local, and I will go over non-SSL 389, and I will type in our bind user, which I'm going to bind in as the administrator account. Type in the password for the user, and I'm going to click this hourglass to get the root forest context DN. This is basically the root of the Active Directory forest, and we use this for the aggregate schema. I'm going to use that exact same namespace for what I would like the virtual identity server to connect to. You could, for example, type in a namespace of cn equals users, DC equals optimal IDM, DC equals local, if you just wanted to proxy to a given container within Active Directory. I'd like to have the connection to the entire Active Directory, so I'm going to choose that default. Notice if I click Next here, it will do a bind to the user to Active Directory, so we know that the user ID and password were correct. Then I get a question, would I like to use advanced features? We're not going to use these. You can look at future videos that show how to use the dynamic groups, static groups, and virtual schema, and they're also on the website. We're going to click No to that and click Save, Done, and our configuration is now complete. So we can start the virtual identity server under Control Panel. Let's go ahead and bring that up and navigate to our virtual identity server. Runs as a standard Windows service, and we start the service, and the virtual identity server is starting. It's building the aggregate schema from Active Directory and has already started. So now I'm going to click on our LDAP manager application to browse the Active Directory through the virtual identity server. I'm going to click on configure here, and it didn't have a password, and that's why it failed to connect the first time to the virtual identity server. I'm going to type in the password and click Save, and the settings are saved. It's creating that initial connection to the virtual identity server. So if we take a look at our tree view here, refresh the node, and notice we are now able to browse through the virtual directory our Active Directory forest. And we decided just on base install to put it in this OU equals AD. The product wizard did that. We can change that, and you can see that in the other videos showing advanced features of how to install and configure the product. But right now we have a one-to-one match and are able to proxy to and from Active Directory. So the virtual identity server doesn't have this stored, but instead, as I'm browsing in these directory trees, the virtual identity server is proxying that search request down to Active Directory, then returning the results to my browser client. So there we are. We have a one-to-one proxy firewall view of Active Directory. And we did this in under 5 minutes. Take a look at the other videos and you'll see powerful features such as transforming the directory tree structure. So we can actually change the structure of Active Directory to look to a LDAP client in a totally different format, OU-wise, as well as applying filters to filter out certain trees or views of data.